Happy New Week, everybody. Now, I'm delighted to say Gurav is back with me. Of course, she is. We've got a lot to get through, The first rounds of the Champions League games. We've had the WSL going on. It's all going on. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, it feels like it's been a full-on week of football. I think we've learned a lot about a lot of teams as well. Let's start with Champions League. You mentioned that there. I know you've been working across the Champions League. Of course, very busy you've been. But let's start with that Chelsea game. They drew, of course, midweek to 20. Bit of a shock, I would say. But Sonia Bonpastor made 7 changes to that team from the one that faced Man United last weekend. She faced a bit of criticism for it, and you can kind of see why, because I know you've spoken a lot before about her being a bit spoilt for choice when it comes to her best 11. It didn't pay off against 20. Do you think in some points that could actually be the biggest thing that cost them this season?
Yeah, and I sound like a stuck record, because I've been saying this for a little while now that I think we become so accustomed with Chelsea being so good that when they don't annihilate teams, everybody's like, what's going on? Let's all panic, right? But Sonia Bonpastor's still unbeaten, which is unbelievable, first and foremost. But I just think you have to make the decisions. Like, you can't be scared to upset people. I'm not necessarily saying Sonia Bonpastor is, but I just think, like, to make 7 changes in that way, to bring Hamano in. I like Hamano, Jean-Francois as well. I like those players. But I just think, like, there's no chemistry, the continuity. And I think it will probably be one of the biggest problems for Sonia Bonpastor, because although they didn't lose, I mean, first and foremost, I've got to give credit to FC Twente, because I think often when a team like Chelsea is expected to win, this is a team that got ruined by Chelsea last year in the Champions League. And Van Hinkel's goal was amazing. And I just think, yeah, that will probably be. And there was some interesting decisions. Sari came off the bench, 16 years old, came into the game. She actually did really well. But like, some of the substitutions were also quite strange. Hamano comes off in the 52nd minute. Do it at half time if you're just going to. I'm not saying I want to be Chelsea manager, and I think I am, because we all think we know how to pick a team, which I'm not saying I do. But at the same time, it's like there's no chemistry. Alyssa Thompson comes off after 60 minutes. So fair play to FC Twente. I thought they did really well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think we kind of maybe criticised Sonia Bonpastor more because of how good she was last season. She came in and sort of didn't seem to get anything wrong, bar, of course, that defeat to Barcelona. But, speaking of Barcelona, they're out there beating Bayern 7-1 in their opener. It's a statement. And like you said, Chelsea last season put 9 goals past Twente across the 2 games that they played them. And you're talking about, Chelsea having to win the Champions League this year because that's the point that they've got to where everything else, it just feels like it's easy for them to win. If they can't do that this year, if they can't win the Champions League, as someone high up at Chelsea, what are you thinking? Are you thinking we need to start thinking about a different strategy? Is it the manager? It's so hard, right?
Well, yeah, it's almost like just a bit anticlimactic, because every year we have the same conversations. It was almost like Man City men before they won the treble. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, constantly, like, are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? I think for this team, like, is Sonia Bonpastor going to play a different team in the Champions League than she does in the WSL? I mean, you could arguably say after one game, is that what she's going to do? Because to make such drastic changes, and in the new style format, the 18 team format, it's different to last year. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a group stage. If this is in the group stage, Chelsea still go through probably as the top of the group is one draw. Let's all not get carried away. But I think, honestly, Barcelona would have beaten anybody on that day. They were unbelievable. And I think people have been sleeping on Barcelona because they lost the final. All of a sudden, everyone's like, oh my God, they're not a good team. They are still the best for me. They might not be Champions League winners right now, but the quality, Alexia Putellas' goals, like, were just unbelievable. The strength and depth that they have is just incredible. Payor, Claudio Pita comes off the bench, scores two. Paraluelo scores. Like, and Bayern Munich are a good side.
Honestly, yeah, you look at some of the names in there, the likes of Georgia Stanway, of course, and co, and you're thinking, God, put 7 past a team like that. It's impressive. And then on the flip side of that, almost, we then talk about Chelsea at the weekend. 1-0 win over Spurs. I was at this game, and we had Martin Ho on the show last week, who I thought was so impressive, speaks so well, and he knows how to run that team. I know Chelsea got the points in the end, and Spurs kind of have nothing to show for that game on paper, but can we just give them praise for that performance where it's due? Because I have never seen a defensive performance like that from any team in all the games I've watched football. They were absolutely fantastic to hold Chelsea like that. And in the end, Kira Walsh had to send one in from really far out. That was the only way they could break down the line. I mean, credit to Spurs, right?
Yeah, it was a great strike from Kira Walsh as well. I think Beth England will be really disappointed, but I like the way that Kira Walsh has shifted it. It was great footwork. She's not known for her goal scoring ability all the time, but it was a fantastic finish. And I agree with you. Like Martin on the show last week, he was brilliant. They obviously had to make that change in the midfield. Aitonen came in, Drew Spence wasn't available. So like Sumanen was still performing well. I mean, it was difficult because I thought Ashley Neville had a really rough time against Alyssa Thompson. I thought Alyssa Thompson was brilliant in that game, and it's just good to see. Like I've seen her time and time again cutting from the left hand side and bend it in the far corner, and I've no doubt at some point soon one of those will go in because she has that in her locker. I think credit to Tottenham. They've looked good this season. Chelsea, they didn't make it easy for Chelsea, but making that many substitutions again, it just looks disjointed. I mean, Lucy Bronze came in positive, but team selection, Ellie Carpenter for me has been the best player in the WSL this season. Just saying, that's my opinion. Lucy Bronze then comes in for her. What's Sonia Bonpastor going to do now? Because Lucy Bronze fit, Ellie Carpenter fit, competition for places, but who's going to play?
As someone who has played in at that level and you're playing a lot of games every week, do you think it is quite harmful as a player then to, I guess, obviously it's good to have competition, I suppose, and to know that there's someone pushing you for your place. But then, say, for example, if you are Ellie Carpenter now, and Sonia Bonpasta says, okay, we're going to rotate you, you're going to play maybe this week, but you're not going to play next week. Do you think that is good for a player, or is that actually quite harmful?
No, it's not good. I mean, psychologically, it's not. I wouldn't be happy because I think Ellie Carpenter's been their best player. Genuinely, I think she's been amazing. Aggie Beaver-Jones is one of the mainstays as well. There's only her and Ellie Carpenter that have continued to play, and not been taken out of the team. So, yeah, I mean, as a player, it's happened to me before when I played for England at times, it didn't matter what I did. I could score 2 goals in a game, but I already knew that they already knew their team for the next game. It could have been a friendly. Those things are quite difficult because as a player, it then becomes a bit stop start. You're in the momentum and I love competition for places, but I keep saying it, you can't have like these coaches come from a bit of a delusional place when they're like, oh, we can have two number one goalkeepers, or we can have two starting right backs, we can have two starting left backs. That doesn't have longevity for me because ultimately you want to work for your place, but at the same time you're gonna have to make someone unhappy, and that's what makes the best managers the best because you have to make difficult decisions. I wouldn't want to be Sonia Bonpastor right now. I would because she's an amazing manager, but at the same time, like really difficult decisions, individual player meetings, like tough times.
You know who that makes me think of as well? Serena Wiegmann over the Euros, right? Everyone laid into her for maybe not rotating and she stuck with her guns even when players weren't playing the best. But I guess at the end of the day, look at what the outcome was. 2 Euros in a row. I mean, for her, she's won three, of course. But yeah, you make a good point. Be interesting to see what she does, of course. Let's move on now to talk about your former club, Arsenal, because from the heights of kind of winning the Champions League all the way back in Lisbon now to last Tuesday, it was a tough watch against Lyon. And not even because I thought Arsenal were necessarily poor all the time, but because the 2 goals they conceded were just down to kind of pull your hair out defensive mistakes.
Yeah, poor from Van Domselaar on one of them, especially. And I know I keep going on about this team selection, but some of the decisions for me were questionable. There's certain players that I think should never leave a lineup, and that's Caitlin Ford and Katie McCabe. Like, genuinely, like, they are the core of this team. Work hard, got quality. Anyone that watched the Champions League final will see exactly what they're about. Taylor Hines coming in at left back, not quite sure about that decision. Reed then comes back in, Lotta Wubben goes out, you know, and it's difficult. I understand being a manager. Chloe Kelly started in that game against Lyon. Beth Mead was on the right, but there's just because they spent all that money on Olivia Smith doesn't mean she has a divine right to play. But like, why bring in a player like that if you're going to be in and out, in and out? A bit like how Alessia Russo was under Jonas Eideval. You have to give that player the confidence that they are one of your key players, you know? So, which players have the best chemistry together at Arsenal in the front line? Still yet to be determined because I'm not seeing, obviously the front three all play for England that started against Lyon. So that helps. They have that telepathy. But I just think when it comes to the quality, Lyon, we're just on a different level. De Mornay, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, it's not quite coming together. And I mean, Arsenal did this last year where they had that blip. And at the time, I put it down to kind of Jonas Eidevall, the leadership wasn't quite there. It wasn't quite coming together under him. But it feels like, I know then they went on to win against Brighton, but that was anything but convincing. I think Brighton actually may be unlucky. And of course, they couldn't play Michelle Adjumang, Rosa Kafaji, who were both not eligible, who've been so good for them last season. If they'd been playing, I think maybe it's a different story, but. What do you think it is for Arsenal? Is it just they kind of have a moment every season where they just think, oh, hang on a minute, no, it's not working at the moment, and then suddenly come back into it? Or is there something deeper here?
It's a weird one because I've often questioned like why we haven't gone for key players, and we have in the last couple of years. So, going to get Olivia Smith and Alicia Russo previously as well. Like they have invested. I think Emily Fox has been an incredible addition to this team. I think Renee Slegers has done an amazing job, no doubt. Winning the Champions League doesn't really get much better than that. But yeah, it's been a really disappointing start to the season. You know, the draw against Villa at the Emirates. And I just think there's like fragilities there. You can't put your finger on it, but like they come up against Benfica in the Champions League next. And like, if this was 6 months ago, I'd be like, Arsenal are going to win this convincingly. Now I'm a little bit like, I still believe, but I'm not having that same belief. There's a different energy about the team. And sometimes this does happen. When a manager goes to be an interim, you're trying to prove your point. You're trying to, there's that new balance. Then they become the main manager. I love Renee Seger. She's an amazing person, an amazing manager. But now the players need look like they need just a little bit of a rocket to just kind of like get going again. It just looks a little bit stagnant at the moment.
Yeah, and perhaps some of that is just coming off the back of that incredible success that I think very few people expected them to reach. And it's like, how do you match that now as a player? And we will see what happens. I'm seriously worried that they won't make it into the Champions League spots because now move on to talk about Manchester United, who are just flying at the moment. I mean, their first Champions League group match. They're in Wonderland. Maya Letizia, who gave so much love to last week, she scores the penalty that gives them the win over Valerenga. I know it wasn't, necessarily the most incredible match ever, but they've got a win, which is more than Arsenal and Chelsea have got.
Yeah, I mean, who cares? It doesn't have to be easy on the eye. Maya Letizia, I'm going to talk about her every single week until Serena Wiegman plays her. And I'm hoping, she'll be selected for England in the up and coming games, but give her a chance. Please give Maya Letizia a chance. Real leader, steps up. And I've said this so many times, like, I think there's this massive dark cloud over Manchester United as a whole, the men's team and the women's team, that they can't ever seem to get the credit they deserve. There's this massive like, oh, we can't say Mark Skinner's doing well, or we can't say this, or we can't say that. No, we can, because they are doing well. When you look at their team, like on paper, they've got some good players. Jess Park, she's having an unbelievable season. Mallard is having a great season. Turler, like they have really good players now. But if you look at their squad depth, it's not the levels of, a City, an Arsenal, or a Chelsea. And that's why I genuinely feel like Mark Skinner's done a good job with this roster and this team.
I cannot believe Jess Park ever didn't play for Man United. I know she's only been there a couple of months, but when she came out at the Hill Dickinson and scored those two goals, I was thinking she looks like she was born for this. And I know that game against Everton, it finished 4-1, obviously, to Man United at the weekend. It wasn't without concern, obviously, because it did take them a while to get into the game. Everton taking the shot lead with a great goal, by the way, and Man United just not able to put those chances away. Obviously, they kind of turned it around, but I guess there is still work to do there.
I mean, ultimately, I was delighted that Hayashi got the first goal, because that's the first time they've played there and it's a fantastic stadium. But I think ultimately, like Manchester United women, I think if this is this time last year, it would have taken them a little bit. I don't know if they'd have won the game as convincing as that. So I do think they've turned the corner. I do think, the additional signings they brought in last year, Turland, brilliant signing, brilliant player, can put the ball in the back of the net. Fredolina Rolfa as well. So I think Manchester United have got this little bit of like, confidence. We haven't even spoken about Ella Toon. These are like world class players. So I do think they can. I said it when I spoke to you, didn't I? And I said they were my team that I think will exceed expectations in the Champions League. I think they could be that dark horse. And I said it before they'd even kicked the ball in the Champions League.
Yeah, you did. And I think they're continuing to prove that. And I made some pretty wild and wacky predictions last year, as you know, but a lot of them came true. So it's time for another one. I know we're a few games in, so maybe this is cheating a bit, but I do think from what I've seen so far, Man United are going to win the WSL. I think this is the season.
What?
Yep.
What? Are
That's
you
wild.
okay? Are
No,
you
should I?
okay? Nah.
Yeah,
I
I
think my
promise you,
Wi-Fi's
it's
gone
not
out.
just like Monday morning. I watched because I watched Chelsea yesterday. I was thinking that this doesn't look like a team that want to like go out there and win a seventh title. I think Man United want it more, and I think now's
Really?
the
I
time.
mean, you are right. I'd say like 90% of the time. You spoke about Olivia Smith before
Yeah,
everyone was talking about her. So you know your stuff with her. But I mean, I love that you're not sitting on the fence, but I can't see that. We'll see, because you
that
are
is
usually
definitely the
always seem to be
wildest one
good.
I've ever
That
made.
is like, one says hot take, they say hot take. That one, I've just got off of a flight and that one has hit me.
Yeah, it's like, am I dreaming now? But
But
anyway, we
fair
will
play.
see. Yeah, you heard it here first. But anyway, let's now move on to talk about Liverpool, Man City. Oh God, this was a game and a half. Man City somehow managed to beat Liverpool. I don't understand what went on because talk about drama. I mean, we thought there was a late equaliser, there wasn't. I feel for Liverpool actually. I really do because the fight is there. They're trying so hard. You can see it in the players and. It's never been the players' fault. I think that the investment hasn't been there. They're obviously trying the best with what they have. But City, something different about them this season.
Yeah, I mean, they gave it a good go. I mean, when you look at the possession, I'm not a massive stats-based person, but 65% possession to Man City. They do usually outpossess teams. I think when you look at the quality of the Liverpool squad, they gave it a good go. Fair play to them. They didn't make it easy, for Manchester City, especially going up by that Kapok's goal as well. Benny, who I love, as you know, Firmino then gets on the score sheet. I don't know. I think City are that team that this time last year, if they hadn't have had all the injuries, they'd just beaten Barcelona. They were in an incredible run of form. So, like, for me, I feel another hot take. If anyone is going to win the WSL, I think it's going to be City. I do. I do. If it's not going to be Chelsea, I'm not changing my mind. I'm still sticking to Chelsea.
Okay.
But I think if anyone can push them, I think the quality individually that this team has and the strength in depth, I think they've got a bit about them. I don't personally feel sorry for Liverpool, right? Because at the end of the day, like the individual players, maybe, yes, the players for sure. But the club have to do more. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like when
yeah,
you're
for
looking at the
sure.
team and the individual players and the investment, getting that money from Olivia Smith, I'm not saying they then start need to spending it all, like spend it all straight away, but more needs to be done because ultimately we know no relegation this year. They might get away with one there.
Well, you talk about getting away with it, and I wanted to raise this because we're talking about relegation this season, and obviously it's a little bit different because there's a relegation playoff. Liverpool, West Ham, still without any points. A lot of that, particularly at Liverpool, is because of a lack of investment. But you think about it, and at some point, one of these teams probably is going to pick up a point and they'll get away with it. The other one will finish bottom probably, but then they won't get relegated because they'll have a chance to save themselves when they go up against whoever it is that ends up third, I believe, in the championship, WSL2 as we now call it. And that to me, it doesn't sit right with me because it just means that, say, for example, that team then comes back into the WSL and they think, okay, we can do exactly what we did last season, not invest, and we can stay in the top flight and have that status. How is a team allowed to get away with that? That doesn't benefit the players, that doesn't benefit the fans, that doesn't benefit the league. So I really don't like this relegation playoff thing.
No, and the timing of it is also, I mean, it's inevitable. This is what they're going to do, but the timing of it's interesting because I agree with you. I think sometimes there's teams that it's almost like if we had a two-team relegation every single year, teams like Leicester, West Ham, those types of teams, I think have been getting away with it for a really long time. They don't have to like invest a lot because they know there's going to be a worse team coming up and they won't go down. So they're in this like plateau area. They're in this grey area where they're okay. They don't have to invest a lot, But West Ham haven't won now in 8 games. Now they were my team that I said would do okay this year. Now historically, West Ham get better as the season goes on. That's my optimism. The quality they have in their team, Asai, Martinez, but at the weekend, I mean, they dominated that game, let's be honest, against London City Lionesses, but Zimic on the goal, like that was, I mean, we all make mistakes, and unfortunately, when a goalkeeper makes a mistake like that, it will go in the back of the net. If I miss as a centre forward, no one remembers because I'm always the one that can be the hero. But it was so poor, wasn't it? Like fair play to Asalani for like
Yeah.
anticipation and all that, but like that is one of those games where Rian Skinner would have thought we should have could have won that one.
And she's the kind of manager who I think really pushes her teams hard, and we know what she's like. We've had her on the show before. She's a hard taskmaster, but I think, oh, for West Ham, yeah, you're not going to pick up a win if you're making mistakes like that. And also, yes, you mentioned Asai there, hits the woodwork and doesn't go in, but those are the moments, right? Those are the moments where your season is defined on, and West Ham just not making the most of it so far. Another game where neither team made the most of it, Aston Villa Leicester. This one finished goalless, which was not at all what I was expecting. I mean, it was a case of Villa should have won. Leicester kind of hung in there and then got better throughout the game, and that was about it, really.
Yeah, Chastity Grant had an opportunity in the game where I thought she should have done better. She goes in on goal. Ebony Salmon was active in that game and was kind of causing a lot of problems. I thought Missy Kearns had a good game. I thought she looked really, really good. But other than that, like I thought Leicester actually at times looked better than I've ever really seen them before. You know, they were dominating the ball, they were getting in good positions. Kane was playing some couple of really nice little passes. Because I think often at times, like Janice Cayman is like the only player that if you watch the highlights when you watch the game, it's always Janice Cayman recovers the ball. Janice Cayman is at the end of the ball. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't seem to have, you know, enough strength and depth in that team, and it's kind of heavily reliant upon one player. But I do think I'm starting to see a few, and the goalkeeper, Leipzig, I thought was incredible in that game. She had a fantastic game. So giving love to the goalkeeper there. I think overall, a bit anticlimactic, but I think nil-nil was probably a fair result. Didn't really have much in it, but both teams were going at it and they just almost cancelled each other out.
Yeah, and if you can't take your chances and put it in the back of the net, Ebony Salmon had a chance, I think, which probably you should be putting those away. But if you can't, that's about it. And then you get to a situation where a team like Leicester now, you're kind of thinking, actually, we're probably safe in the WSL this season now. London City, by the way, in the top half of the table. And Leanne, got to give kudos to you because I know we're heading into the first international break only, but this is exactly where you said they'd be. They're not near the bottom. They're not going to get into the kind of Champions League spots, but they're really comfortable and they're going to stay up. They are. So well
Yeah,
done, Leanne.
thank you. And they're doing it without Danielle van der Donk as well, who's been
Yeah.
out. So, you know, I do think at this point in the season, like they would be happy. I know Michelle Can's got big hopes and aspirations. They don't want to be this team that's middle table forever. But I think it's been a decent start, apart from the amount of goals they were conceding.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, we've got a bit of a break now from WSL action for a couple of weeks. We've got some League Cup action international, but I will be back to help you break down some of that and, of course, Champions League. But for now, thanks for having me, Leanne.